Good morning, children. Today, let's talk about the spirit of festival and feelings, okay? What are the festivals you celebrate? Are you happy in getting gifts on festivals? What is the best gift you ever got?
What are the common festivals of India?
Today's lesson is the best Christmas present in the world. Before I begin, I want to give you some information. The story in the backdrop of World War I. Compassion and feelings of brotherhood in difficult times. A generous and considerate person helping one to get the last wish. Have you ever been in a junk shop? What are the things you see there? Things like old but unstable furniture, which are cheap, can be mended and reused. The author of the story bought a roll-top desk at a cheap price. He thought to repair it, so he started working on it, removed the roll-top, looked at the drawer, and found the last drawer is tightly closed. What do you think you will find inside? Is it gold, antique, money, or mysterious objects? He pulled it out and found a small tin box that is sellotaped and had written Jim's last letter received on January 25, 1914, to be buried with me when the time comes. The author was in scruples whether he should open it or not. Finally, he opened it and saw a letter addressed to Mrs. Jim Macpherson, 12 Copper Beeches, Birdport, Dorset, written in pencil on December 26, 1914.
What is the significance of the year 1914 in history? It is the time of World War I. 28 July 1914 to 11th November 1918. What about World War II? It is from 1st September 1939 to 2nd September 1945.
Think what happened in the wars. There was fight, cruelty, hatred, killing, bloodshed, consequences like abandoned home, orphaned children, poverty, crisis. Now, your task is find out more information about World War I. Make a list of vocabulary which you think is difficult. Make a list of grammatical sentences that you need an explanation. The letter. December 29, 1914. Dearest Connie, I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about it at once. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday Christmas morning. It was crisp and quiet all about. A beautiful morning as I've ever seen, as cold and frosty as Christmas morning should be. I should like to be able to tell you that we begun it, because the truth, I'm ashamed to say, is that Fritz begun it. Someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land. "Happy Christmas, Tommy! Happy Christmas!" When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back, "Same to you, Fritz! Same to you!" I thought that would be that. We all did. But then suddenly, one of them was up there in his grey greatcoat and waving a white flag. "Don't shout, lads!" someone shouted. And no one did. Then there was another Fritz up on the parapet, and another. "Keep your heads down," I told the men. "It's a trick." But it wasn't. I think that is what every soldier wants on both sides, Hans Wolf said. "Take care, Jim Macpherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you." He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly, I felt. He turned to wave just once and then became one of the hundreds of grey-coated men drifting back towards their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts, we heard them singing a carol, and singing it quite beautifully. It was "Steel Notch, Silent Night." Our bass gave them a rousing chorus of "White Shepherd Watched." We exchanged carols for a while, and then we all felt silent. We had had our times of peace and goodwill, a time I will treasure as long as I live. Dearest Connie, by Christmas next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know for all that happened today, how much both armies longed for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. Your loving Jim. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove to Birdport, just a few miles away, to meet Mrs. Macpherson, who is the wife of Mr. Jim Macpherson, 101-year-old woman, as she desires the letter to be buried with her. The author found out the house of Mrs. Macpherson easily, but she was not there. He was informed by an old man that she is now in a nursing home at Burlington House, which is located on the Dorchester Road, as her house had caught on fire, and she was saved by the firemen. The author reached the nursing home at Burlington House and spoke to the matron, who were all celebrating Christmas happily, singing with everyone in the nursing home. The author informed the matron that he has come to meet Mrs. Macpherson to give her Christmas present. The matron was very happy for Mrs. Macpherson, as she hardly gets visitors. The matron also informs the author that she is rather tired today, so they all decided to leave her alone so that she can get some rest. The matron leads the author to a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around, and left him to meet Mrs. Macpherson. The author wished her Happy Christmas, Connie, and gave her the letter, and explained how he got the letter. However, she does not seem to be listening to the author. Rather, she kept on looking at the author's face. Mrs. Macpherson stroked the letter tenderly and suddenly get the author's hands. With tears filled in her eyes, she said, You told me you'd come home by Christmas, dearest. And you are here. The best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear. Sit down. I read your letter so often, Jim. Every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are here. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much, and then perhaps we'll have some tea. I have made you a nice Christmas cake. Marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. Dear students, Mrs. Macpherson didn't realize the author is not Jim, but a different person, and she was so much overwhelmed by the sight of the letter once again, and was imagining that, as was said in the letter, that Jim has come to meet her in this Christmas. She didn't realize that Jim never returned from the warfield.